The elevator doors closed with a soft ping, and James Parker found himself alone with Victoria Reed for the first time since that night. His heart hammered against his ribs as the memory of her skin against his flashed through his mind. Now she was his boss, the untouchable CEO who held his family's future in her manicured hands. If you're enjoying this emotional journey already, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories that will tug at your heartstrings. James never expected his life would become this complicated. 3 years ago, he was happily married with a 5-year-old daughter. Now he was a single father, working overtime at Reed Innovations, and dealing with the consequences of one impulsive night with a woman who now controlled his paycheck. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. Victoria's perfume filled the small elevator space, the same scent that had intoxicated him that night at the industry conference in Chicago. Before either knew who the other was. Before his wife's diagnosis. Before everything fell apart. "Mr. Parker," Victoria said coolly, her eyes fixed on her phone. "I need those quarterly projections on my desk by tomorrow morning." "Yes, Ms. Reed," he replied, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. He needed this job. Lily needed her medication. One mistake couldn't ruin everything he'd worked for. The elevator stopped on the executive floor, and Victoria stepped out without looking back. James exhaled, unaware he'd been holding his breath. How had his life become this tangled web of regret, responsibility, and unresolved feelings? 6 months earlier, James had been drowning in grief and medical bills after losing his wife to cancer. The job offer from Reed Innovations had seemed like a lifeline, until he walked into orientation and saw her. Victoria Reed, the woman from Chicago, now his CEO. The recognition in her eyes had been immediate, followed by something that looked like panic before her professional mask slipped back into place. They had silently agreed to pretend that night never happened. It was better that way. Professional. Uncomplicated. But nothing about their situation was uncomplicated. James' apartment was quiet when he returned home that evening. Mrs. Gonzalez, his elderly neighbor who watched Lily after school, was reading a story to his daughter on the couch. "Daddy!" Lily jumped up, her dark curls bouncing as she ran to him. At 8 years old, she was the spitting image of her mother, a fact that brought both joy and pain. "Hey, princess." He scooped her up, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Were you good for Mrs. Gonzalez today?" "She was an angel," Mrs. Gonzalez said, gathering her things. "She finished all her homework too." After paying Mrs. Gonzalez and making dinner, James sat at the kitchen table reviewing spreadsheets. The quarterly projections Victoria wanted were complex, and he couldn't afford to make mistakes. Not when Lily's well-being depended on his steady income. His phone buzzed with an email notification. From Victoria Reed. Subject, Quarterly Projections. "Mr. Parker. Please bring the projections to my home office tonight at 9 p.m. I need to review them before tomorrow's board meeting. Address attached. V. Reed." James stared at the screen in disbelief. Her home office? At 9 p.m.? This was highly irregular, even for the notoriously demanding CEO. Was this some kind of test? Or worse, was she finally acknowledging what happened between them? He called Mrs. Gonzalez, who agreed to come back and stay with Lily. By 8:45 p.m., he was driving through an upscale neighborhood, his portfolio on the passenger seat and anxiety knotting his stomach. Victoria's house was a modern architectural marvel, all glass, steel, and clean lines. It screamed success and solitude in equal measure. James parked his modest sedan beside her luxury SUV and took a deep breath before approaching the door. She answered wearing casual clothes, jeans and a simple blouse, so different from her power suits at the office. For a moment, she looked like the woman he'd met in Chicago, not the intimidating CEO. "Come in, Mr. Parker," she said, stepping aside. "Thank you, Ms. Reed." He maintained the formality, unsure of the rules in this new territory. Her home office was as impressive as expected, minimalist but clearly expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city lights below. "Would you like a drink?" she asked, gesturing to a small bar cart. "No, thank you. I'm driving." He placed his portfolio on her desk. "I've brought the projections as requested." Victoria nodded, taking a seat behind her desk. "Let's review them together." For the next hour, they worked through the numbers. Victoria was brilliant, catching details James had missed and suggesting improvements. Despite his initial discomfort, he found himself engaged in the work, appreciating her sharp mind. "These are good, James," she said, using his first name for the first time since Chicago. "But I think we can push the innovation budget further." As they continued working, the professional veneer between them slowly cracked. Victoria ordered takeout when they realized how late it had gotten. They ate at her desk, discussing business strategies and market trends. "Why did you really ask me to come here tonight?" James finally asked as they finished their meal. Victoria was quiet for a moment. "I needed these projections done right. You're the best analyst on the team. There are other analysts with more experience. But none with your perspective." She met his eyes. "You see beyond the numbers. You understand what they mean for real people." James felt a strange mix of pride and suspicion. "Is that the only reason?" Victoria sighed, leaning back in her chair. "No. I also wanted to clear the air between us. That night in Chicago." "We don't need to discuss that," James interrupted. "It was before you were my boss. Before my wife." He couldn't finish the sentence. "I know. And I'm sorry about your wife." Her voice softened. "I didn't know you were married when we met." "I wasn't wearing my ring that night," James admitted. "Sarah and I were struggling. The conference was supposed to be a break for both of us. Then I met you, and..." He shook his head. 2 weeks later, Sarah was diagnosed. Everything else became irrelevant. Victoria nodded, understanding in her eyes. Life rarely follows our plans. As James drove home that night, he felt something had shifted between them. Not romantically, there were too many complications for that, but something in their professional relationship had changed. Victoria had seen him as a person, not just an employee. And he had glimpsed the woman behind the CEO title. The late-night meetings continued over the following weeks. Always under the guise of work, always at her home where they could speak freely without office politics and prying eyes. James found himself looking forward to these sessions, where Victoria challenged his thinking and valued his input. One night, as they worked through a particularly challenging proposal, James received a call from Mrs. Gonzalez. "Mr. Parker, Lily's fever has spiked again. I think you should come home." James immediately gathered his things. "I'm sorry, I need to go." "My daughter. Is she okay?" Victoria's concern seemed genuine. "She has an autoimmune condition. Flare-ups happen sometimes." He tried to sound calmer than he felt. "The medication usually helps, but..." "Go," Victoria said firmly. "Family comes first." When James arrived home, he found Lily burning with fever, her small body shivering despite the blankets Mrs. Gonzalez had piled on her. He thanked the elderly woman and called Lily's doctor, who advised bringing her to the emergency room if the fever didn't break within an hour. James sat beside his daughter's bed, applying cool compresses and whispering reassurances. He'd been through this before, but the fear never lessened. Lily was all he had left of Sarah, all he had left in the world that truly mattered. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Is Lily okay? Do you need anything?" The unexpected concern touched him. "At home monitoring her fever. Might need to take her to hospital if it doesn't improve." Her response came quickly. "Which hospital would you go to?" James texted back the name of the children's hospital they usually used, then focused on Lily, whose fever was still climbing despite the medication. When it reached 104, he bundled her into the car and drove to the emergency room. The hospital was busy, but the triage nurse recognized Lily from previous visits and expedited their check-in. As they waited for the doctor, James held his daughter's hand, trying to stay strong for her while his mind raced with worries about medical bills and missed work. "Daddy, I'm cold," Lily whispered, her usual energy diminished by fever. "I know, princess. The doctors will help you feel better soon." He stroked her hair, wishing he could take her pain away. To his shock, Victoria appeared in the doorway of the examination room an hour later. She looked out of place in her designer clothes, but her expression was one of genuine concern. "I hope it's okay that I came," she said hesitantly. "I brought some things that might help." She held up a bag containing a soft blanket, a stuffed animal, and some children's books. Lily looked at the elegant stranger with curiosity despite her discomfort. "Are you Daddy's friend?" Victoria smiled, approaching the bed. "Yes, I am. My name is Victoria. Your dad talks about you all the time." James watched in amazement as Victoria sat beside Lily's bed, speaking softly to his daughter and showing her the stuffed unicorn she'd brought. There was a gentleness to her he'd never seen at work, a warmth that contradicted her Ice Queen reputation. The doctor arrived, diagnosing a severe flare-up of Lily's condition and recommending overnight observation. James' heart sank at the thought of another hospital bill, but he nodded in agreement. Lily's health came first. "I'll stay with her if you need to make arrangements," Victoria offered when the doctor left. "That's not necessary," James began, but Lily had already taken to Victoria, showing her the four the nurse had placed in her arm. "It's no trouble," Victoria insisted. "Take whatever time you need." James stepped into the hallway to call Mrs. Gonzalez and explain the situation. When he returned, he found Victoria reading to Lily, who had finally stopped shivering and was listening intently to the story. "Thank you," he said when Lily had drifted off to sleep. "You didn't have to come." Victoria looked at the sleeping child, something vulnerable crossing her face. "I wanted to help. I know what it's like to feel alone in a hospital." James realized how little he knew about her personal life. At the office, Victoria was all business. During their late-night meetings, they discussed work, market trends, occasionally current events, but rarely anything personal. "You don't have to stay," he said. "I'm sure you have more important things to do." "Nothing more important than this," she replied simply. They sat together through the night, taking turns watching over Lily. In the quiet hours, Victoria shared pieces of herself she kept hidden from the corporate world. How she'd built Reed Innovations from the ground up after leaving an abusive relationship. How she'd suffered a miscarriage years ago and never had another chance at motherhood. How the power suits and tough exterior were armor against a business world that still saw female CEOs as anomalies. In turn, James told her about meeting Sarah in college, their early struggles, and the joy when Lily was born. He spoke of the devastation of Sarah's diagnosis and the 18 months of watching his vibrant wife fade away. He admitted his guilt over the night in Chicago, even though it had happened during a rough patch in his marriage. "We're all just doing our best with the hand we're dealt," Victoria said softly. "Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes life just happens to us. What matters is what we do afterward." By morning, Lily's fever had broken. The doctor discharged her with adjusted medication and instructions for follow-up care. Victoria insisted on driving them home, saying James was too exhausted to drive safely. At his apartment, James expected Victoria to drop them off and leave. Instead, she helped get Lily settled on the couch and then made breakfast while James showered and changed. "You don't have to do all this," he said, finding her in his kitchen flipping pancakes. "I know." She smiled. "But I want to." That day marked another shift in their relationship. Victoria gave James the week off to care for Lily, with full pay. She checked in daily, sometimes bringing dinner or books for Lily. When James returned to work, he found he'd been assigned to a special innovation project that allowed more flexible hours and work-from-home days. Their late-night meetings continued, but the pretense of them being strictly business faded. They still worked. Victoria was nothing if not dedicated to her company, but they also talked, laughed, and gradually built something neither had expected: friendship. 3 months after the hospital visit, Victoria invited James and Lily to her lake house for a weekend. The fresh air would be good for Lily, she reasoned. And you could use a break from the city. The lake house was beautiful but less imposing than her city home. It had a warmth her other residents lacked: family photos, comfortable furniture, books everywhere. It felt lived in, loved. Lily took to the place immediately, exploring the private beach and collecting shells. James watched his daughter laugh and play with an energy he hadn't seen in months. Her health had improved with the new medication regimen, but this was different. This was joy. Victoria joined him on the deck, handing him a cup of coffee. "She's amazing," she said, watching Lily. "So resilient." "Like her mother," James replied. "Sarah never let anything keep her down for long." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "You still love her very much." "I'll always love Sarah," he admitted. "She gave me Lily. She was my best friend for 12 years. That's as it should be." Victoria's voice held no jealousy, only understanding. Love doesn't end just because someone is gone. That evening, after Lily had fallen asleep in the guest room, James and Victoria sat on the deck watching the moonlight on the lake. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. "I never expected this," Victoria finally said. "When I saw you at orientation that day, I thought it would be awkward, maybe even problematic. I never imagined that we'd become friends." James finished. "Is that what we are? Friends?" There was a vulnerability in her question that the powerful CEO rarely showed. James considered the past months, the late-night conversations, the way Victoria had shown up at the hospital, her kindness to Lily, the growing comfort between them. "I think we're something," he said honestly. "I'm just not sure what to call it yet." Victoria nodded, accepting his answer. "I've never been good at relationships. My career always came first. It was easier that way, less messy." "Life is messy," James said. "That's what makes it real." Under the stars, with the gentle sound of waves lapping at the shore, Victoria leaned toward him. Their first kiss since Chicago was different, not fueled by alcohol and attraction, but by something deeper, something built on shared experiences and mutual respect. When they returned to the city, both knew their relationship had fundamentally changed. They proceeded cautiously, mindful of the professional complications and, more importantly, of Lily. Victoria insisted they keep their personal relationship separate from work, maintaining professional boundaries at the office while slowly building a life together outside it. Lily, with a child's intuition, seemed to understand Victoria's importance before either adult fully acknowledged it. She began asking when Ms. Victoria would visit again, saving drawings for her, including her in bedtime prayers. 6 months after the lake house weekend, Victoria attended Lily's school play. Sitting beside James, watching Lily perform as a tree with 2 lines, Victoria realized she had found the family she'd stopped hoping for years ago. "Move in with us," James said that night after Lily was asleep. "Or we could find a new place together. Somewhere with a yard for Lily." Victoria hesitated. "Are you sure? This would change everything. The company has policies about executives dating employees." "Then I'll find another job," James said simply. "You're more important." "No." Victoria was firm. "You've built something valuable at Reed. We'll figure out the professional side. Maybe you could transfer to another department, one where I don't directly oversee your work.